Chance here, a great save. A turner from McClare. Might come. A terrific goal by Sheridan.
Brexman against Jones. Get in.
You could have two goalkeepers in there that would have trouble saving.
Hello, welcome to the Wednesday week, the Sheffield Wednesday podcast, sponsored by the Riverside Cafe, who I believe have suffered a 40% drop in profits during the international break, purely down to Eddie not buying 2-pint pots. Speak of the devil, Eddie's here.
It's the international break, so I've been buying 1.1186 litre pots, and that doesn't say anything about how I voted in the Brexit referendum. That's just the way that it is. It's international. That's how we have to do it. It's metric style, baby.
And Victoria completes our trio for this week's Wednesday week.
Oh, hashtag tripod. Hi, guys.
Just the three of us. That's not a thing, is it?
Isn't it? This
just
is the stuff
three
of
us.
I had a proper lull then, Eddie. I feel like that was an intellectual joke that people of only my mental capacity would understand. I had a good lull. Thanks.
Are you suggesting that the majority of our audience wouldn't therefore get it? Or what are you saying?
But most of them message me the day after saying, "Oh, fuck off, back to the kitchen, love." Yeah, I am suggesting that, to be honest. Or they use it as an excuse to say, "Oh, babes, I don't think you should be in the kitchen, babes." So yeah, I do 100% think that nobody else will have got that.
Okay.
Especially Fudge.
I think we've probably got some listeners that maybe don't message you. Maybe. Just the odd one or two.
Maybe because James, I mean, let's just blow our own trumpet here. How many downloads did we get last month?
In the first month of the season, so when this is bearing in mind the fact that we recorded our pre-season special on like the 31st of July or whatever, but it was 20,000 downloads in the first month of the season.
That's mental. That is mental. We used to average 100,000 a season, which was huge anyway.
No, we didn't average 100,000 a season. We didn't average anything like 100,000 a season. We got in the season we got to the playoff final altogether, including all YouTube videos and everything. We got 100,000. The actual downloads was about. But
that's what we told
50,000.
The sponsors. So let's just
I'm pretty sure that at one point we went on a download embargo because we'd reached too far in that promotion season.
We spent too much on Daniel Fudge.
We had to work very closely with the IAB, who are the international board who monitor podcasts and set rules for podcasting in order to come out of that embargo. And that is actually the name of an actual body who do oversee podcasting. That actually wasn't made up by me.
Oh, you're such a loser.
Industry wonk now. Literally, as many inside jokes as we have, I don't think we could get any more niche than inside jokes about podcast regulatory bodies.
Yeah,
it really wasn't a joke. There was no one laughing at that. There was no joke involved in it at all. It was just really boring shit information from James. As you might be able to tell, right, there hasn't been any football. Well, England have played a couple of times, but there hasn't been any proper football. Hence why we're into podcast talk. Right, okay, let's cover some of the news then that's cropped up during the last week or so. So we've got a bit of news, then we're going to do International Watch, which will be fun. And then we've got a bit more news. And then I've got a fun game for you two to play a little bit later on to wrap up tonight's
Oh, that's exciting.
podcast.
That wasn't even on the running order.
Yeah.
OMG. Or was it?
So
Was
you
it on
two
the
know
running
nothing
order?
about this. No. This is top secret. I've planned it all myself.
Oh, that's good.
That will be a little bit later on. For now, let's talk about probably the biggest bit of news from over the last week or so. And this is kind of something that's been lingering in the background for a while. We kind of knew that it was going to come to a head. And this is the hearing involving, well, primarily Fernando Forestieri from a Wednesday point of view, but also the rest of the squad who were involved in. It was pretty much an 11-man versus 11-man kind of punch-up at the end of the Mansfield Town. Yeah, it was like something you see in kind of videos that get posted on Lads Bible of Sunday League games or games in Brazil or something where it's all gone to shit. But anyway, yeah, that happened in Mansfield. So a 25 grand fine for Fernando Forestieri. Perhaps more importantly, from our point of view, a 3-game ban. Eddie, is this fair?
Yeah. So I think we were all quite shocked. I think at the time maybe more amused than shocked about the scenes that transpired at Field Mill. It was a bit of a throwback in the sense that we haven't seen those kind of all-out. It wasn't just 22 men. It was members of the coaching staff. There were stewards involved. There were members of the home crowd. It was an old-school brawl in the true sense, in the way that we have grown up watching, kind of old school hooligan videos on the internet and before that on VHS. Did
Danny fucking Dyer?
Yeah.
Run it?
Oh, I can't believe it. It still melts my nut to this day. It was.
Jog on, you fucking mug.
You say. So, look, okay. So, for those who haven't seen it, everyone will have seen it by now. Basically, what happened was some slags got proper naughty after the end of the game. Look, Fernando Forestieri has been banned for 3 games. The ruling is quite... it's not very transparent in terms of what the 3-game ban is based on, because it's very much worded in the sense of bringing the game into disrepute, about violent conduct, about not conducting themselves in the correct way, etc. I know at the time there was quite a lot of scutterbutt that was being put around that potentially this was a racially motivated incident. And without wanting to get into this too much, I think there is certainly part of it that seems at least feasible to me, that something might have been said by Fernando Forestieri in Spanish that might have resonated with a player who is of an ethnic minority. I can understand why that might have happened. I don't personally believe that there was any racial charge to it. I think it really was a sense of Fernando Forestieri doing what he always does, which is get a bit petulant when he gets kicked up in the air, get a bit petulant when he doesn't get his own way. And it kind of degenerated quite quickly into a lot of tit for tat that culminated in one of the worst tackles I've ever seen, followed by some beautiful fisticuffs. So the upshot is, even in a pre-season friendly, our talismanic mercurial player will be fined £25,000, which I think it's a fair guess is probably a week's wages. The Mansfield player has been fined £1,500, which is probably about a week's wages. That is done and dusted. The clubs have been fined proportionately at a rate of £20,000 and £3,000 for failure to control the players, etc., etc., etc. None of that really matters in the grand scheme of things. What probably it does have material impact is that Fernando Forestieri misses 3 games, and those 3 games are Stoke, Villa, and Forest. So probably, and I think we'll talk about what is coming up later on in the podcast, probably those 3 games were games at the start of the season, or when the fixtures came out, that we ideally would prefer to have our talismanic mercurial attacking striker midfield general there. However, the thing that has really jumped out at me is that he's going to serve this 3-game suspension. Win, lose or draw, he'll be back for our game against Leeds. And if there is one player who the Leeds players and fans despise and love to wind up, and if there is one club for whom Fernando hasn't exactly managed to keep a lid on his Latin temperament, it has been Leeds. So that, to me, is possibly the most interesting thing to come out of this. I don't know whether we will truly miss him in these 3 games because, let's be honest, he hadn't necessarily figured in the last couple of league victories, certainly not from a starting position. But if he gets the shackles pulled off in time for the Leeds game and he's ready to go, part of me thinks that maybe he might last half an hour of that before having another 3-game ban for something that happens. Is that
Probably.
fair? I don't know.
Unless we start with Hutchinson, let's be honest. But can I just point out something that has completely blown my mind since I read the figures that were that the players were fined? Can you earn £80,000 a year playing for Mansfield Town? Can you earn 80 grand a year playing for Mansfield Town? I am in the wrong job. If 1,500 quid a week is your weekly wage at Mansfield Town, I am.
Could you do a job for Mansfield, Vic?
I could. On a Tuesday night in Stoke, babe, I could smash it for Mansfield Town. Danny Reed has got nothing on me, I swear to God. 80 grand a year to play for Mansfield. The game's gone to shit, hasn't it?
It's a short career, though, Vic. It's a short career. Eddie, I have but one question to ask you off the back of what you just so eloquently said in reference to this subject. What, may I ask, is Scutterbutt?
So this is my word of the week. I have word of the week toilet paper this year. Scutterbutt is it's gossip. It's tittle tattle. It's a bit of good old fashioned bitching, subtweeting, slagging people off without mentioning them on Facebook. Yeah. That is then followed up with a load of people going, "You okay, babes? You're right, babes." So yeah, Scutterbutt. So
you're
there we
okay,
go for
hun?
that.
I'm going to be honest.
Hun?
Message me, hun.
I did while you were speaking. I did put it into Google, which, as always, came up with the Urban Dictionary definition first, which is definitely not what you just said, and is also definitely not repeatable. Even with the little E icon that we have on this podcast on iTunes to indicate explicit, it is not repeatable on any kind of podcast in the world ever. And I can't even give you some clues because it's just you don't want to know. I can't even say it involves something because you just don't want you don't want to know. Let's move swiftly on from that, shall we?
We're not sponsored by Urban Dictionary anyway, so you can go there, but we're not going to tell you to go there.
I like the way you stumbled after
what does
dictionary
what does
there.
The Urban Dictionary of the Riverside Cafe say about it?
Let's move on to International Watch. So we had a few players that were involved in internationals on various different levels over the course of the last few days. We'll start with, I want to talk a bit about Ash Baker, who got his first cap for, let me get this right, it was the Wales under-20s? I feel like I'm making that bit up, can't remember. The interesting thing here, two interesting things. Firstly, apparently had a good game. The second thing is that he played a holding midfielder role. So when we think about the Hutch/Pelye-Pessie role, that kind of holding defensive midfielder role, that's the role that he played for Wales, which is interesting because I don't think any of us have ever thought about him being anything other than a right back. So interesting that's the role that he played for Wales. Big congratulations to Ash on making his debut for them, and if he continues making progress the way he is now, you would start to wonder how long before he's knocking on the door of the A team for Wales. So a big well done to him. It was the under-21s actually. I'm just looking now, and they played against Liechtenstein, and they won 2-1. So well done to them. Now, Vic, unsurprisingly, International Watch, you've been watching like a hawk at New.
Well, but of course. I mean, I was there. I was wearing my new Hugh shirt. I wasn't. But I was watching it on Twitter. And do you know what? Bless him. He had a really good game, didn't he? And we all know how much playing for Kosovo means to him. Like, we've all read the articles that he did in The Guardian and whatever else. And it really does mean a lot. And it was the first game at the new stadium. Is it the Fadil Varocki Stadium? Something like that. Fadil Varocki? It was that stadium anyway. And he, so they had was it like a 10-minute spell in the second half where they just absolutely smashed it and kicked their arse, basically. So he scored, obviously. We've all seen it. It was a classic Newey goal. The amount of knobheads that I have seen on Twitter saying, "Oh, you nearly missed it." Oh, Steve McLean nearly missed the penalty at Cardiff. Did he miss it? No.
Should have saved it, though, shouldn't he? Keeper was no.
Does it matter? It went in. Does it matter?
No, it's fine. Are you going to talk about the overhead kick?
Well, I've not seen it. All I saw on Twitter, and I said to you earlier, like, have you seen it? And can you send me a link? Nobody seems to have seen it. All I saw was people going, "What the fuck? Atty just did an overhead kick and it nearly went in." But I like to know that he's that flexible. I think it's a great thing to know as a 30-year-old woman. But I think one thing that was really interesting, and I know we've done it before, and we have done it before, but the club made a really big deal of it on social media and on the website and whatever else. And there was like a full feature today on the website about his game for Kosovo. And I think that doesn't only show the confidence in him as a player, but I think he's making a good name for himself behind the scenes there because, the media team is stretched as it is. And they're writing that story about him. I think that's quite a nice thing. I don't know. I just read it and I thought, that's really nice that they're doing a feature on Atty and his international duty. They don't really do it on Bannon and Fletcher and whoever else. So I thought that was really nice. But no, I was really chuffed for him. I think it shows a lot of character that he's playing for the club, that, if you read back on all the history of his life and whatever else, he could have chosen a million different international teams to play for. Okay, not Austria, but he could have done. And I think to play for Kosovo means so much for him. And yeah, brilliant. It can only get better. The more he scores, he's signed his long-term deal now. Fantastic.
I think it's a huge story in the football world, but also kind of outside in terms of a human interest story. We grew up during all of the Balkan troubles and all that sort of stuff, and there's an entire generation of players who were effectively robbed from playing for what they thought would probably be their international side, whether that be Yugoslavia, whether that be Serbia, whether that be Albania, etc. And because of the situation there, they became effectively refugees. So can you imagine a story in which a generation of asylum seekers appeared in England and then, 10 years, 15 years later, were playing in the national team? What you've got with Switzerland, especially, with the likes of Granit Xhaka, these are guys who, in a different reality, would have been playing alongside Atty Nuhiu in another national team. And some of those kids decided that they were going to play for their adopted country, and some of them sat and waited. And in Atty's case, maybe he wasn't going to be picked for another country for a while because he was a late bloomer. Let's be honest. But for him to be almost the most important, a big name player for this fledgling international team that went out and they had their first qualifying campaign, remember, for the World Cup, but now to play in the Nations League, which is a fantastic competition for those smaller nations because they play against each other rather than just getting hammered 8-0 in every qualifying game for a major championship. And for Atty to be, to show that as much as he is a leader at Sheffield Wednesday, he can do the exact same thing for his country. And you see how proud he is of it. You see how much it means to him. I just think it's a really inspirational story. And I'm sure there are Kosovan kids who have him as much of an idol as he is to you, Vic. I'm going to be honest. But certainly that same charisma, that same desire to be the best that he can be, that we have grown to love about him. And he is a divisive figure at Hillsborough at times, but I don't think even his detractors can say that he doesn't try and that he isn't a hard worker and that he doesn't put the squad first and the club first before himself. I think he does the same thing, and I will be amazed if he doesn't end up being the captain of his country long term and become a real Kosovan icon.
Legend. Yes.
Kosovan legend.
How nice would that be? And do you know what? It's funny when you mention that, Ed. Like, I completely forgot. Like, obviously, I'm 30, and I grew up in like a small village just outside Sheffield called Dronfield, and it was quite a white, like conservative middle class village. And I do remember there were probably 3 girls in my year at school that were from Yugoslavia / Kosovo / wherever else. And they'd escaped that region, and they were a couple of years younger than me, like Atty is, not that much younger, Atty. And they'd literally escaped, like you see with like Syria or wherever now. They had escaped that country, and actually that's quite a big deal, isn't it? That he is one of those people. He was a refugee himself, or whatever. He moved to a different country. He's moved around. I think that's really cool. And actually, in 20 years' time, when there's someone from Syria doing exactly the same, or someone from Afghanistan doing exactly the same, we'll all be like praising them as well. I think it's really cool.
Okay,
2
enough
words for
talk
you
now. Come on.
Rita Ora. She, in many ways, the female Atty Nui.
Yes. Oh, imagine if they got married. Oh my God, that is my dream.
Right. No, stop. We're moving on. I'm absolutely bored shitless. We're moving on. Right, Eddie, you've been keeping an eye on our 2 new loan signings who lined up for their countries retrospectively in kind of youth team capacities.
Yeah, well, I think we're a little bit more than youth team here. So obviously Josh Onoma, England under-21s. He played against Spain. So again, central midfield, which is, of course, what we've signed him to be. So it's interesting to see that he played in a 3-4-3 formation. He played 65 minutes before being substituted. England actually went to a 4-4-2 after that, which seemed to suit them better. Not ideal for Josh because he no longer was on the pitch. However, he did have a couple of decent moments. He had a shot on the turn before half-time that tested the keeper. And he had a couple of decent passes through balls to Ryan Sessegnon that could have turned into something. He's clearly, at that level where he is regularly going to be part of that setup for the under-21s. He started on the bench for Latvia as we record tonight on Tuesday. So he came on as a late substitute against Latvia. This is exactly where we'd expect him to be given his pedigree. Ideally, because we want him to be a workhorse for us, we don't need him to become some mega star in the 21s. But he seems to be exactly what we have been led to believe he will be. And I look forward for him to get into training at Middlewood on Thursday. And hopefully, whether he plays a part on Saturday or not, I don't know. But he certainly looks like he's of a level that is going to fit in with our squad. Michael Hector, really interesting. Until we signed him, I'd not really known much about him. I'd obviously, from his Hull days, I assumed that he was, I kind of had him pegged exactly the same as a kind of Dawson centre-back character. I assumed that he probably grew up somewhere in East Yorkshire or something, but he's Jamaican. He's a full international for the Reggae Boys, and he hasn't played for them for 2 years. So this week he made his re-debut for Jamaica. They had a tough test in what is their version of the Nations League in the CONCACAF Federation. So this is the Central American, North and Central American Federation. They have like a Nations League that they've just started. They were playing against a global powerhouse in the form of the Cayman Islands. Jamaica beat the Cayman Islands 4-0. I don't recognise any of the players that Jamaica put out, and even fewer of the ones that the Cayman Islands put out. But Michael Hector...
Was there no Jermaine Johnson?
No, JJ, not there. I could only assume that after they were 4-0 up after like 35 minutes, the crowd stopped chanting, "Get JJ on. Come on, get JJ on." and they just relaxed into it. So anyway, Michael Hector played. He played centre back. They won 4-0 against a team that, let's be honest, is a level above Stockbridge Park Steels, and that's probably being generous to them. But really interesting. That's his first game back playing internationally for 2 years. He's obviously a leader in that squad because of the level that he's played at. He thinks they can qualify for the World Cup, which means that he's got some fire in his belly and that he wants to be one of the senior members of that team to get the Reggae Boys back to a major tournament. So, I actually think, as far as this week has gone, a decent run out for both of them, and let's see what they bring to the championship. But they certainly both look like they are the right sort of players that we should be bringing in places of positional need. So, 2 thumbs up for Josh and Michael.
Next on my list is Preslav Borakov. I think I got that right. Who played for I just refer to him as the Bull. Played for the Bulgarian under-19s. In fact, he was captain for them. They were on a mini tour of Germany. So this is a bit strange. So you've got the Bulgarian under-19s team who were playing a few just normal kind of German league teams. So they played Hanover 96. He scored as they beat them 3-0. And then he got 2 in their second game against Eintracht Braunschweig. As they won that one 4-0. So a very successful few days for the Bull. I think perhaps at this point what we need to do is just consider the notable absences from this list of people that we've just been talking about on International Watch. Because you'll notice there's been no mention of Barry Bannon, even though Scotland got absolutely ripped to bits the other night, although I think they did get a result last night. And there's also been no mention of Kieran Westwood. Now, the Republic of Ireland haven't had the greatest of breaks either. But Vic, is Ireland picking Kieran Westwood even an option when he is not even getting on our bench?
It's all a little bit weird, isn't it? I still don't understand what is going on. We've seen the cryptic tweets from Kieran Westwood. We've seen the club not saying anything. We've seen injuries being declared, injuries being denied. I mean, who knows what is going on there? Like, are we doing a bit of a George Hurst? Is he running out his contract, or is he genuinely injured? Or I don't know. Like, there's just no way of knowing what is going on. Barry Bannon, I think, is a blessing in disguise that he wasn't chosen for Scotland, because I think the last thing we need to lose right now is Barry Bannon, especially when we're still without Kieran Lee and we are still without Fernando Forestieri. Let's praise the fact that Barry Bannon didn't play for Scotland. But the Westwood thing is weird, isn't it? It's just, I don't know. I don't get it. And we've talked a million times, and it's so boring now, but we have talked about the youth goalkeepers getting a chance at Wednesday, and both goalkeepers, as we have discussed, are very, very, very good, and there's no denying that. But Westwood is, in my mind, one of the best keepers in this football league, if not one of the top 2, if not one of the top 3, if not the best. Like, there's no denying that. So why isn't he in our squad? Why isn't he in the Ireland squad? Like, what is going on? It just doesn't make much sense. But it's one of those things that at the moment, stuff out of the club is coming out so positive that I want to ignore it, if you know what I mean, because I feel like it's like a negative that I just don't need in my life right now. I need to just close that box and all that shit. But I don't get it. Barry Bannon, I'm more than happy for him not to play international football. I'm more than happy for him to stay fit and play for us. But yeah, Westwood has thrown me. It really has. I don't know what you guys think.
I was reminiscing earlier about one of my favourite scenes from Father Ted. Did you both watch Father Ted?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Okay, good. So my favourite scene was where Mrs. Doyle and the other kind of older lady are arguing about who's going to pay for the afternoon tea that they've had when they go out for like a couple of drinks together. They're talking about, did you hear about what happened with Mrs. Walton? And someone broke into a house and she got stolen. It was like, what did she get stolen? No, they stole her. And maybe someone's stolen Kieran Westwood. Maybe that's what's happened. That he's just been, maybe it's a team abroad that, came over to do a stadium tour and they've just pinched him. He's been stolen and he's now being held captive by some team somewhere in Midland Europe, maybe. I don't know.
Maybe he's at that, there's that big exhibition, isn't there, at the moment, at the National Football Museum that's like Bands FC or something. Maybe Kieran Westwood is actually in the National Football Museum wearing a pulp Sheffield Wednesday shirt, just trapped in a little glass cage of emotion. Like, maybe that's it.
That's all right. There is talk about them actually releasing that shirt. I've just been involved in a bit of Twitter chatter about it, but that might be happening.
Oh, well.
I would enjoy it massively if, I was watching the BT Sport 1 European goals roundup, and it turns out that Panathinaikos have suddenly got a new goalkeeper called Kyrgios Westwooden. I'm like, well, hang on a minute, he looks quite familiar. That would be great if they'd actually kidnapped him.
If Celebrity Big Brother hadn't finished this week, I would have expected it. Like, maybe he's going into the jungle. Maybe we're going to see Kieran Westwood eat a kangaroo's anus. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's the way forward.
While we're on the subject of the international break, did either of you watch the game against Spain on Saturday?
No.
I kind of feel I feel a little bit bad ranting about this, but this Nations League, what an absolute pile of crap. Like, I don't understand anything about it, and so I know we've referenced this before, but obviously there's me, there's James, there's Peter, right, that did the Financial Fair Play podcast, and we could kind of understand the finances of a football club. The three of us in a WhatsApp conversation on Saturday could not figure out the rules of this tournament, no matter how much we researched it, because there's a final and there's people that qualify for the European Championships because of it, but then there's still normal qualifying as well. It just doesn't make any sense. I don't understand it. Can either of you two shed any light on this? Is it any idea what this thing's all about?
I think it is the Anglo-Italian Cup. If I remember correctly, it works exactly the same way. Is that it's completely irrelevant. You play bizarre teams that you've got no interest in playing, and then at the very end of it, there's a final that nobody cares about. And it seems, as far as I can tell, the marketing pitch for it has literally been, yeah, but at the end of it, it's going to be amazing because Euro 2020, Azerbaijan are going to get in. And that's not interesting
really crap
anybody.
Marketing. So basically what we're saying is that this is the modern day equivalent of the Intertoto Cup. It's like, it's random teams, no one really gives a shit, and at the end of it something happens and no one's going to care about it. Right, that's fair enough. Right, so this is the Wednesday week with the Riverside Cafe, who I believe have suffered a 60% drop in profits in the last fortnight because Vic hasn't been on any dates in there. Right, let's talk a bit about our under 23s, because there was some major excitement this week as a couple of friendly faces that we've not seen for a while lined up for the under 23s. Eddie?
So let me take you back to the early months of 1994. So Chris Waddle, who regular listeners might remember as being basically the best player we've ever had, he had been injured and he came back after an extended layoff in a reserve game at Hillsborough, and 15,000 people turned out to watch Waddle return. We didn't quite get as giddy as that. However, the buzz on social media and on the internet about the fact that Gary Hooper and Kieran Lee were both going to figure in this under-23s game against Colchester was approaching that level of giddiness and silliness. Predictably, Kieran Lee played 15 minutes and was then substituted. For those Wednesday fans who don't have their finger on the pulse necessarily, Lee Hicklin, Kiverton Owl, was told exclusively that was already planned. So he was only ever going to play 15 minutes, Kieran Lee. Gary Hooper played for the first half before getting substituted. And so obviously he's slightly further on in his recovery, which is as to be expected given the different injuries that they've been battling. I'm going to be honest. We talked about, Josh Onamar and Michael Hector. I think Kieran Lee and Gary Hooper, they put even less on tape than the two new loanees. There was a nice pass from Kieran Lee. There was a shot that just went wide from a hoop dog. That's all it was. It was about fitness. It was a strong side that was named by the under-23s, which I suppose probably speaks a little bit to the fact that we are playing a lot of what you would think would be our under-23s in the first team. So, you did have, players with first team experience in there. I would expect, because this was about fitness, both of these guys to figure in the next under-23 games to continue that road back. Probably Hooper for an hour, 70 minutes. Kieran Lee, if he can make a half, then that'd be fantastic. Let me just check the fixtures. Oh, yes. So our next under-23 games are away at Leeds and at home to Sheffield United. Oh, my days. I now fully expect both of them to, A, score all of the goals, and B, get all of their knee ligaments done by our rivals. And so I will plead now with the coaching staff Sheffield Wednesday. Don't rush them back, please. What we don't want is to have two derby matches where they get injured, get sent off, or just get broken down completely. So, a nice run out, completely inconsequential. But bloody hell, we've got a couple of tasty reserve fixtures coming up, haven't we?
Surely at under-23s level, like Leeds and Sheffield United, their players can't be complete fannies as well, can they? They have to reach professional level before they turn into that kind of level of twattiness to go out and try and injure two of our best players. There's a lot of shithousery going on. There's epic level shithousery going on in the 23s because there's a lot of frustrated players there. Because even though it's called the under 23s, it has senior members of the team in. And so I'll tell you a story about the Leeds under 23 side. So there's a young lad who grew up on the same very, very well-to-do housing development that I live on, and he plays for the under-23s at Leeds now. And basically, since the age of 15, because he has been the kind of golden boy that plays centre mid for those teams, all the way from under-14s all the way up. Basically, every other team that he goes up against tries to kick the absolute ever-living shit out of him. And the exact same thing still happens in the 23. So I would fully expect the Leeds, dirty Leeds reserves, and of course the mini pigs, the pigs reserves, Sheffield United under 23s, to do the exact same thing to Kieran Lee and Gary Hooper. Because why wouldn't you? If you can take your main rivals, deprive them of two of their key players, why the hell wouldn't you? And this is not Colin Warnock stuff. This is just sensible. Kick him out of the game. Shithousery. I think you touched upon something quite interesting there, which is the new nickname for the Sheffield United Academy teams could be the Micro Pigs. I think that's a great nickname for them. It would go down really well. I love that.
Under 18s, Micro Pigs. Under 23s, Mini Pigs. And then obviously, the first team, just pigs.
Yeah, absolutely. In other academy news then, we have appointed a new professional development phase manager. That's good to have on business cards, that. Andy Holdsworth. So he is going to be primarily responsible for the under-18s. Now, this is a guy who's had a decent career in football, over 400 appearances altogether in his career, mainly at Huddersfield. I've got to be honest, I can't ever remember kind of seeing this guy play or ever particularly noticing him. But 200 appearances for Huddersfield between 2003 and 2009, which, if my memory serves me right, they were the years that they were shit. But anyway, he's certainly played here, there and everywhere, up and down the country at various different clubs, and he comes in to look after the under-18s. It's worth noting, by the way, he's only 34, so that's quite a young age for someone that's just going into to coaching. So in terms of working with them, kind of fitness levels and stuff like that, it's quite interesting that he's still at an age where arguably there's plenty of people out there at 34 that are still playing professional football, and this is a guy that's been kind of coaching elsewhere before he's come to us. So that could be a really good appointment. So welcome to Andy Holdsworth to SWFC. Right, what else has been happening? Well, Barry Bannon, big day coming up on Friday, because he will find out whether or not he has won the Goal of the Month competition. Vic?
Yes, so I went on to vote for him. It was like the Sky Sports Goal of the Month or something, wasn't it? The club tweeted it, Sky Sports tweeted it, so obviously I went on and had a little vote. And I think, to be fair, it was like 50% for him when I went on, and that tends to happen, doesn't it? It was like Wednesday votes in general on the internet. We always seem to win them just because everybody just gets a VPN behind them and just votes the shit out of it, or we're just massive. But yeah, so it was when I went on, he was ahead by miles. I think there were 3 goals to choose from, and he got 50% of the votes. So I'm guessing he's going to win it. It was a great goal, wasn't it? It was brilliant. Yeah, fantastic. I think with Barry Bannon as well, a lot of the time, I think we've said this a lot. And I think it is true in that he is a confidence player. Barry Bannon works on his confidence, and at the moment he's flying high. He's doing very, very well. He's getting the standing ovations that he deserves. He's getting the cheers that he deserves. But actually, is this a little something that could just go on the mantelpiece and just make him feel that little bit more special?
Oh, well, fingers crossed for Barry. The winner of that is being announced on Friday. Now, that's pretty much it in terms of news. And we've I spent hours trawling everywhere that I could to try and find some news for us to talk about. But I always think that first international break, what is it, kind of 5-6 games into the season, just a chance to just step back and just take stock a little. As you know, league tables don't count until Christmas. That's the rules. However, I thought this might be a nice opportunity for us all just to reflect on kind of one good, one bad. So one positive, one negative from the season so far. So, Eddie, let's come to you first. What's been your high, your low, your good, your bad?
Oh, you know what? The highest of highs, given how we felt coming into the season. Managing to come out of a very, very short transfer embargo ahead of the end of the transfer window closing, which meant we didn't lose any key players. And then we were able to sign contract extensions for Barry Bannon and Lucas João, and B, being able to get 2 who appeared to be high quality loanees in areas that we need them. That for me is better than anything that I expected could have happened in the off season, and certainly once we understood the state of the club's finances, what we expected to happen by the end of August. So, as far as positives, I don't think anything, even the uptick in form, can compare to that. In terms of negative, really, it's just an ego thing, and we don't look at league tables because they don't matter, they don't count, as you've said. But right now, the 3 teams that I dislike the most occupy the top 3 places in the league table. I vow to you, as God is my witness, it will not last. And if it means me having to commit criminal acts in order to ensure that happens, so be it.
Those 3 teams, so there's been obviously Sheffield United, Leeds and Middlesbrough?
Middlesbrough.
Middlesbrough, remember where I am speaking from.
Got it.
So
they're his biggest bugbear, to be fair.
So I'll put it this way. So we had some
His son plays for them, but he just hates them.
we had some new stair carpet fitted today, and there were three lads turned up to fit the stair carpet, and I wasn't expecting too much conversation. Made him a brew, talked about the weather, that kind of stuff, and then they spotted my Wednesday memorabilia collection, which is a lot of framed stuff hanging up on the hall and landing walls, etc. And then I had to go through
memorabilia collection, not yours.
I had to then spend an hour listening to them talk about every single time that Wednesday have lost against the Borough at the Riverside and at Hillsborough and blah, 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 blah. You're a nobody team. You're a nothing team. Nobody cares. Sunderland and Newcastle regard you as irrelevant. You're so far ahead of Hartlepool and Darlington that it doesn't matter. And realistically, you're in a small market town that happens to have a couple of chemical plants in it. Why don't you cough? So anyway, Middlesbrough. Who cares about them? We're a Sheffield Wednesday podcast. Hey!
I'm glad I asked. Right, for me then, I was gonna originally. I thought I've got to say that the new contracts for João and Bannon have to be the highlights. However, I thought, I'm going after Eddie. He'll almost certainly pick that as his highlight. So my backup highlight, and actually there's a lot of different people that I could probably pick for this. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to say the performances of Jordan Thornley since he came back into the team, because I think that he's been an absolute rock, and he is already, for me, starting to really show himself as being our leader of tomorrow. He is the future leader of that team, and that I think is absolutely brilliant. He had a great season last season, but this season that guy's just stepped up a level. So I'm going to pick him out as being my positive. And my negative, and actually I feel really awful doing this, but I've just been so disappointed with the performances of his that I've seen, and that's the one that I mentioned last week actually. And I'm gonna have to say George Boyd, who I just think, when I've seen him played a couple of times this season, I just think he just looks not even half the player that was playing in the Premier League not that long ago. And I hate what's happened to him, and whether it's confidence, whatever it is, but he just looks, I don't know, he looks lost. He just looks like he's just got nothing left, and it's horrible to see. But I've got to pick it as my negative, because I don't think there's been anything in the Wednesday sphere that's annoyed me as much this season of just how effortless his performances have been. He's just there's been nothing to it. So that's my negative.
If you were going to right now, Saturday's team sheet, and you've got a choice to fill that 11th spot, and it's a direct choice between George Boyd and Alman Abdi, what you doing?
He'd bring me.
Yeah, £1,500 a week. Back. Do you want it?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, you've got to pick Boyd because he's actually got 2 feet that work. So that's one up on Alman Abdi.
Yeah, he won't die mid-game. So.
Right, go on then, Vic. What's your good and what's your bad?
Do you know what? I actually think you two are absolute miserable bastards, because I came up with so many positives and only a couple of negatives. So my positives.
Hang on. Oh. It was quite clear rules. It's one of each. You can't roll off 20. So it's one positive, one negative.
I've got too many, so fuck you. I've hardly been in the script tonight, James. So I'm taking my moment. Anyway, my first bit has to be the film, the All Wednesday film that my good friend Maxton built. It was amazing. It made me 100% more positive all over again. I felt like the club was mine again. I just loved it. So yeah, I'm using that. New contracts for players. So obviously Nuhu, Zhao, Bannon, brilliant. We've obviously also seen young lads come through the ranks. So your Penny, your Preston, is that his name? Thornley, there's a couple of others as well. Brilliant. We've kept financial fair play at bay. Negatives has been quite difficult to think of, which is a great problem to have. So Adam Reach hasn't really posted that much on Instagram recently, which is always negative. And I couldn't find him on Tinder. But however, I've got a new strategy. Me and Eddie went into this the other day, whenever we get bored at work, and I'm not particularly bothering with Tinder anymore. I am now following Fit Blokes on Twitter. So if I followed you in the last week, it was either me or Eddie thinking you were fit. So there you go. Yeah.
Lovely. Right, okay. Couple of games coming up then in the next week. So we are back at Hillsborough on Saturday for the visit of a team that before the season started I think we'd have been a lot more scared of than we probably will be going into the fixture this season. Stoke are the visitors on Saturday. Eddie, have we got anything to fear from this game?
They are, like you say, a long way away from the dominant side that many of us, I think, expected at this level. So far, looking back at their season, they've beaten a woeful Hull side. They've lost badly away at good teams in Leeds and West Brom, and they got absolutely battered by Wigan. I wonder whether Gary Rowett has actually lived off about a 6-week spell at Birmingham and is actually just a really mediocre manager, or whether they've got some deep-seated problems as a team that is, that's come down. So a couple of points. Saido Berahino, he ended a 2-year goal drought in the Milk Cup against Huddersfield's reserves. So he has not necessarily got his shooting boots on. He made his international debut for Burundi this week against Gabon and scored again. So that's 2 goals in 2 games for a player who really hasn't done anything at all in the last 2-3 years. So probably he'll get a hat-trick against us. I look at this Stoke squad. Right, they've been relegated from the Premier League, and you look at their squad. They have got Jack Butland, Ryan Shawcross, Benik Afobe, and of course 97-year-old Peter Crouch. We are in such a good run of form, and they are in a terrible place psychologically right now. I've got such an odd feeling about this game, and I honestly believe I never said it. I can't think that I've said it in 6 years of the Wednesday week. I think that we're going to get beaten at Hillsborough by Stoke because it feels odd at the moment. And I hate that, but that's the way I feel.
I see where you're coming from. It is so set up for a Wednesday win, isn't it, that it's almost too obvious. It's too set up for it.
Do you remember when Peter Crouch first broke through? we played him... no matter where he was in his late teens, early 20s, we used to play him at Hillsborough, and he would come to Hillsborough and just tear us apart and score goals for fun. I think I've still got like PTSD from that. I can't see past Stoke being a team that will beat us and that we will beat after the Lord Mayor's show. 3 wins on the bounce, everything looking great. Come back to Hillsborough, really, really poor performance and the defeat. I hate that because that's not me, but that's the way that I feel.
And we follow that up with not an easy midweek game either, as we go off to Nottingham Forest, which actually has been in recent years quite a happy kind of hunting ground for Wednesday. I always kind of joke about our kind of annual 3-0 or 3-1 win at Forest, which we always seem to go there and kind of get either 2 or 3 goals. But obviously this year they've spent a bit of money. Their season hasn't really taken off. I think they're about 14th, 15th in the table right now, which, as you know, I don't take a great deal of notice of, but their season has been slow to start. Again, another game that you kind of think on paper, well, we should be going there thinking we can win, but it's kind of the unknown, this one, because I think at some point, Forest, with the players that they've got, with the money that they've spent, they're going to burst into form. It's just a matter of at what point do they kind of get themselves together, and just coming off the back of an international break where they've had a bit of time to work together, Don't know. It's going to be, I think, an interesting couple of games and kind of the unknown. We don't really know what to expect from them. Certainly, I think one thing that we probably could all agree on is that they are going to be a bigger test than maybe some of the games that we had just before the international break. I think we'd all acknowledge that we probably played 3 relatively poor teams in Millwall, Ipswich and Reading, whether they're poor generally or they were just poor on the day. But either way, games that we kind of we'd have expected to have won considering how they went. The next 2, it's going to be it is going to be interesting. Right, this is the Wednesday week with the Riverside Cafe, who I believe may suffer a 70% drop in profits on Saturday because I might not make it there due to the fact that I've got to help my mum move to her new house in Penistone, so I don't know what time I'm going to get to the game. So I apologise in advance for that. Right, okay, that's pretty much it for this week's Wednesday week. However, we normally finish with something a little bit different, and at some point in the not too distant future we will return to Ask TWW. For now though, I've got a fun game to play. Now I'm hoping as I do this game that you've not spent any great time studying any local newspapers of late. So what happened is one of the local papers got hold of some research that someone had done where they took kind of signings of yesteryear and worked out how much those players would be worth now. So however much they cost back then, what they would cost in today's money, effectively. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the name of a player and how much their transfer fee was when they signed for Sheffield Wednesday, and then give you the name of another player, and you have to tell me whether or not their transfer fee, if they were a player today, would be higher or lower than the last player. Are you following this?
So this is play your cards right, but with Wednesday legends.
So the question is, so I'll give you your starting player. I'll then give you another player. You have to tell me higher or lower would they be worth in today's football game. We'll start with you, Eddie, then. So your first player is Gilles de Bilder. Remember him? He was great, wasn't he? So we paid £3.3 million for Gilles de Bilder back in the day. So would Andy Booth be worth more or less than Gilles de Bilder now?
Well, so we paid 2.7 million for Andy Booth, and he was he's much better than Gilles de Bilder, mainly because he cared more about football than he did about his dog. And so I will say Andy Booth is worth more than Gilles de Bilder.
You would be correct. So Gilles de Bilder would be worth £21.3 million now, somehow. Andy Booth would be worth £26.5 million now.
Reasonable. Absolutely reasonable.
Okay, so £26.5 million for Andy Booth. Chris Waddle, higher or lower?
Oh, look, this has got to be a trick question, hasn't it? So we paid £900,000, £1 million for Chris Waddle, okay, in 1992. Oh, come on. If we were getting Chris Waddle today, he would be like £95 million. He was one of the best players in Europe. Higher. Absolutely higher.
At £22.4 million, it would be lower. It would be lower.
You're saying that we could get Chris Waddle for less than Gilles de Bilder?
No, that would be more than Gilles de Bilder, 21.3. So,
but less than Andy Booth.
But less than Andy Booth. All right, so finally, you've got Chris Waddle at 22.4. Higher or lower for Andy Hinchcliffe?
Oh, this is horrible. There's no way that Andy Hinchcliffe could cost more than Chris Waddle. And I get it. I understand the game now. So we paid, was it like 2.5 million, 2.25 million or something for Hinchcliffe? About 5 years later than we did Waddle. You know, I stupidly, I think it'll be higher. Andy Hinchcliffe was the John Stones of his generation. So, yeah, you know what? I'm going to go higher. I bet, as mental as the Premier League is, Andy Hinchcliffe is worth more than Chris Waddle.
He actually cost us back in the day £3 million for Andy Hinchcliffe.
No.
In today's money, he would be worth £31.6 million. So he would be the highest of all of the players that we just talked about. Eddie, I've got really tragic news at this point because Vic appears to have dropped off the call, and seeing as I've prepped it, you're going to have to play another round now of the inflated football transfer price is right. So your starting player, right, who cost us £3.3 million is Darko Kovacevic. Okay, he is your starting player.
I can go on.
Higher or lower for Mark Bright in today's money?
Right. I can only assume that the last round has brought it home to Vic that football has been broken her entire life and that she just needs to go and find another hobby. And that's why she's just rung off the call. So Mark Bright, £1 million in the summer of 1992 against Darko Kovacevic. £3.3 million in 1996-ish. Who was a better servant to the club? It's Brighty, one of our best strikers. But again, with the rules of this game and the inflation that the Premier League has brought to prices, I'm going to go Darko Kovacevic.
So Kovacevic would now be worth... right, so this is higher than anyone in the last round of the game. £31.8 million Darko Kovacevic would now be worth. Mark Bright, a mere £25.4 million. But
Mark Bright scored 20 goals a season in the Premier League. That's that is Harry Kane level.
I know, it's crazy.
How could it be?
All right, so 25.4 million, Mark Bright. Higher or lower for Ian Nolan?
Don't be stupid. No, forget that. Ian Nolan, the best thing he ever did was when he just signed for Wednesday. I was lucky enough for my birthday, my parents got me the chance to go and attend the team photo presentation, team photo day. My sister, who was at the time, I think you'd probably describe her as jailbait. She spent the entire time sat on Ian Nolan's knee because he wouldn't let Peter Atherton have a go. So I would say Ian Nolan lower than Mark Bright. Forget that. There's no way he's worth more than Brighty.
Okay, at £21.6 million, you would be correct to
Good.
Go lower. So if you get this one right, then you've got a clean sweep on round 2. So Ian Nolan, £21.6 million. Andy Sinton, higher or lower?
Oh, the ultimate flop. And you know what? I can remember being as excited as I could possibly be when I picked up the paper on that morning that they revealed that Wednesday had beaten Arsenal to Andy Sinton's signature for £2.75 million. That was a huge amount of money at the time, but he was so poor. And it was before it really took off. I don't know what to say. I know. You know what? No, I'm going to stick to my guns. He was a terrible player who flopped massively. Ian Nolan was a journeyman who nonetheless had a long-term career. I'm going to say lower because it's madness. If Andy Sinton's worth more money than that, then this is madness, and we should just give up football.
Right, I'm going to tell you the number now. Right, Andy Sinton in today's money would be worth £45 million.
No, it's impossible. No, that has to stop.
True story, bro. £45 million.
Andy Sinton is not worth £45. £45 million in today's money. No, look, no. Right, I'm not having that. Right, so we talk about some of the biggest transfer busts in history, and you look at Fernando Torres for £50 million. Even Fernando Torres is more value for money at £50 million than Andy Sinton at £45 million. Surely. Is that just a damning indictment of Sheffield Wednesday transfer policy throughout the 90s? This entire segment has made me sad. I'm sorry. This is horrible.
See whether or not you can get this. So we've done 9 players altogether in among that segment. There's 1 player left in the top 10. So this is players from the 90s that Sheffield Wednesday bought and how much they'd be worth now. There's 1 player left in the top 10 that we didn't do there. So this was a player who we signed at the ripe age of 27 from Sampdoria for £2 million. Des Walker. How much do you think, bearing in mind all those numbers, how much do you think Des Walker would be worth in today's money?
So we signed him basically at the exact same time that we signed Andy Sinton for not much more money. And Des Walker, arguably one of the best players that we have had in terms of a servant, but also in terms of being very, 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 very good. He's got to be worth more than Andy Sinton. He's got, if Andy Sinton's £45 million, Des Walker is probably, 1.6 billion.
1.6 billion. I tell you what, he comes in at number 2 on the table at £40 million. Andy Sinton is actually number 1. Andy Sinton would be our most expensive player in the 90s if they were replayed now. I actually lied, by the way. There was 1 other player that makes up the top 10, which is Dejan Stefanovic, who we bought for £2 million from Red Star Belgrade. He would now be worth £19.7 million. So
that's weird because I think back. I was thinking when you said there's 1 more player. I'm thinking Dan Petrescu. He was a big name, wasn't he? Emerson Tome we sold for a lot of money. I'm thinking probably there's 1 name they've missed off that list, and it's probably Danny Sonner. What a good game. I enjoy that game. I'd like to see the working behind that because that's either genius or mental.
It was in the Star. It was about a week ago. So if you want to look it up, it's on their website, and it's not their research, but they did a story about it. So have a gander on the Star's Owls page, and you'll be able to track it down from there. Right. Anyway, somewhere among all that, unfortunately, Victoria has dropped off the call. So if you want to catch up with Vic, you can get her on Twitter at Victoria1867. Eddie, give us a plug for where you're at.
So, as always, at Sausage Arms on Twitter, at Instagram. I am coming to the Stoke game. So, hopefully, we will all be together in the amazing Riverside Cafe before the match. But if not, then hit me up online. I'm always interested. And I know I wasn't around last week. I spent a lot of time putting together my musical tribute to our Twitter followers. So if you've got an idea for a song that you want me to record as far as Wednesday's concerned, then let's discuss it on Twitter, and I will put my not inconsiderable talents to use. And if anyone tells you that I'm not talented, then they are wrong. They are Andy Sinton wrong.
You can follow the podcast at TWWCash and get me at James Marriott. And you can do the whole job lot through the website at thewednesdayweek.co.uk. Right then, football is back on Saturday. We promise this whole thing will be a lot more interesting next week. So we will catch up with you then.
There's a chance here.